We're here at Eustis High School to interview Don Jennings. Don was born and educated in Indiana. He was born in Fort Wayne. Can you get us from little childhood Don to college educated and ready to teach Don?
Well, I really started playing my instrument in Fremont, Nebraska. My mother had to go to Nebraska because my father went to the service and went overseas in the South Pacific. And I went to Fremont High School in 1945, 1946. And I was the captain of the band, and I was the student director of the choir, and I was doing quite well, I thought. And at that point, we had a concert, and at the concert we had Percy Granger. Percy Granger came to give a concert in my school. And of course, I didn't know who Percy Granger was. And so I took him to the choir room to introduce him to the choir and the choir director. And he said, "Do you suppose that I could play for them?" I said, "Why, sure, you could play for them." So he played Country Gardens. And I thought to myself, I know that tune. But I was surprised because I really didn't know who Percy Granger was. But later on, and today, I certainly do know who Percy Granger is.
And where did you go to college?
I went to college at Taylor University in Indiana. It was basically a vocal. They had choirs, and they did oratorials and that sort of thing. And I was friends of the oratorial conductor. He gave me an opportunity to do a lot of rehearsals, and I had a group of my own there. And it was I really got started with choral groups in college. After college, then, I went to a place in Winchester, Indiana, and I started a little band there, and people thought it was really great. We played at the basketball games, and they thought it was really tremendous. And I had a pretty good choir. We did some touring with that choir, and went from there to McKinley. McKinley was a consolidated township school, and this is where I had my first band. They had a great feeder system, and that ladies gave me some very fine players, and we had a choir. Now the choir was made up of all the senior high school. Everybody in the school was a member of the choir. We went to contests. The judge says, "Is there anybody left in your school?" No, just 2 people, and they set up the risers. So the whole school went to contest, and we had a pretty good band there. And I had a person in the county office, county superintendent, who had gotten my name on a list of names when I graduated from college. He says, "If you ever need a job, let me know." So that's how I got my job in McKinley. And then I decided to go to Florida because I was too cold. It was freezing. And so we went to Eustis, Florida.
So it was the weather that drove you to Florida.
It was right. The weather that drove me to Florida. I came to Florida, drove into Eustis with a 4-wheel trailer and all of our goods. We had come from Indiana, stopped off at Birmingham and left my wife there, came to Florida. Thought I better find out how or why or what I had to do to get a job in Florida. And the principal here at Eustis High School said, "Is there anybody I can call?" I said, "Yes, you can call the principal or the superintendent of schools in Miami County." And he did. He came back in the room. He says, "If you're half as good as that guy thinks you are," he says, "you can have a job here at Eustis High School." So I got a job that morning. I went back to Birmingham, told my wife, and we were tickled to death and came to Florida. And that's how I happened to be in Eustis.
Well, you were in Eustis here in the 50s?
Let me see. Eustis. Yes, I guess so.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And where did you go after Eustis?
Well, I met Jack Williams, and he thought I did a pretty good job. Of course, while I was here in Eustis, I heard about a man named Jimmy O'Neill. Now, Jimmy O'Neill had the band way back before I came, and they told me if I could have a band as good as Jimmy's. In the second year, we got a one at the marching contest, and Jack says, you can come and work with me at Glenridge Junior High School if you will. So I got an opportunity to go to Winter Park, Florida, and I went to Winter Park.
Mm-hmm.
But I was here. We had a band room down below the hill. When the rain came, the kids put their feet up and the water came rushing through. And we had a big time. We got Ravelli gave us a 1 at contest. The other 2 judges gave us a 2, and I thought, we'll just forget about those 2s. Because if Ravelli thought it was good, it was good enough for me. So that's what happened, and we got over to Glenridge Junior High School in Winter Park.
And after Glenridge, where did you go?
Well, when I was at Glenridge, we started the All-Star Marching Band. The football team had an all-star football team, and in the summertime, they would play north against the south. So we started this all-star marching band and pulled students from all over the state of Florida. And so that's sort of...
Well, I know you were very involved with that, and you helped develop it.
Yes, it was. I was. Yes, I was. I was the. What do you call it? Whatever it was.
Well, you were the impetus behind getting it started and getting it organized.
Yes, and we ran it for years and years and years, even after I'd left junior high school and went to Cocoa, Florida, and Bill Ledoux and was the founder of that, along with Chris Rump and myself.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that had a good long history. What happened once they did away with the all-star football team?
Well, all-star football team, they couldn't handle them. They wouldn't stay in their dorms. So I went down to Tampa, and we moved the all-star marching band to Tampa, Florida, and we played the first Bucks game every year until it sort of ran out of gas, and I guess they don't have the all-star marching band anymore.
No, sir, they don't. Now we have the 9-star concert band that meets at the summer convention.
Mm-hmm.
That has started a new phase for FBA. You also had some wonderful stories about a trip to the New York World's Fair. And
yes, we went to the New York World's Fair and played concerts all over the fair. The fair people would move our stands and music into another spot. Then I'd tell my students, I said, now at 4 o'clock, we're going to play at the New York Pavilion. Everybody be there, and we would all gather. We would play a concert, and to this day, I don't know where Joe Kreiner stayed, but he was at every concert we gave in the New York World's Fair, and I gave him a piece of music to play, to conduct,
mm-hmm.
and he brought his friends, and it was interesting because he had a new group of friends every time we played a concert. Now, after we played these concerts, there was a band that pulled up, Paul Laval, and he played concerts after we played. And after we got done playing, it was really interesting because all Paul Laval's players or musicians would come around my kids, would congratulate them, and they got to know them And it was quite interesting because they did play a concert after our concerts in about every spot.
Mm-hmm.
We had a stage band that played in the RCA television. We played there a couple of days, and as the what is done in television, they had a big ramp, and people would walk over the ramp to see what happens in a television studio. And we were the guinea pigs for the studio for a couple of days with the stage band. It was interesting.
That's great. That's great. I know you were very strong on student leadership and the importance of student leadership. What words of wisdom or advice do you want to pass to future directors about student leadership?
Well, it's very important to have a captain of the band and all the officers, and then it's very important to give them a job. When we went to New York, to the World's Fair, or any place we traveled, the officers were the people that make the bed checks. They were the officers that found any problems. We would have baggage checks before we left home. I know one trip we went and we had baggage checks, and still, an hour after we arrived and got everybody in their rooms, here came my officers with 2 bottles of whatever, put them on my desk, said, here's what we found in one of the suitcases. So, and sometimes the chaperones were not too happy because they didn't have enough to do. And with the grade 8, when we were in, I think we're in Cocoa, Florida now.
Now, who were the grade 8?
The grade 8 was a group of 8 trombone players. And they made a pact that they would have on the 8/8/8 date, they would have a reunion. And they did. And they also made matchbooks, covers, and they had all kinds of trinkets they made with the grade 8. And they were quite impressive guys. And I can't say enough about those. They all went into music, most of them. One of them was a judge. One of them played with Don Ho. One of them he was a college professor. A couple of them junior college professors. And it was quite an interesting thing to watch and see what they did with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And they claimed that I had a little bit to do with it, but I
well,
don't know.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did. What is there about your personal character that has enabled you to maintain a high level of performance in all of your ensembles, no matter what your teaching situation was?
Stubbornness. I think I just never gave up. I expected them to do the things that I knew they could do. And so we just kept on keeping on until we got to where we hoped to be. And sometimes we didn't quite make it, but a lot of times we did.
So high expectations are important.
I think so. If you don't expect your students to do well, they won't. And another thing I found that if a section can play well, you can bring in a 10th grader, and just the fact that he's there, he'll think, wow, I'm supposed to be able to do that. And he begins to do it, and he doesn't even realize why, but he begins to become better at his playing just because he's around kids that do play well, and they expect him to do well.
Well, besides your students playing well, I know that you also demanded that they behave well.
We had one rule. Don't draw attention to yourself. Sort of covers everything when you think about it. You go into a restaurant, don't draw attention to yourself. You go into a theater. We went into this theater, the Radio City Music Hall.
Oh, this little theater, yes.
And we had 109 kids. And we went into the tunnel that's across the street. And the tunnel comes up at the foot right there at the orchestra pit. And when we were coming in there, the orchestra was beginning to play and the pit was beginning to rise. To get those kids in their seat, old country kids they were, to get those kids in their seat was a hard thing to do. Come on, let's get you in their seat. And then, of course, the orchestra rises up to the top of the stage level, then goes down, and then the show starts. But they were quite taken with the sights and the sounds that they saw when they were there.
Besides being steadfast in your beliefs and being stubborn and demanding, what concepts did you instill in your students that you're very proud of?
I think just keep going, keep doing, keep trying, keep the thing happening. The students had sectional leaders. Every section had a sectional leader. They would have sectional rehearsals. They would demand a lot from themselves. And every student sectional leader that I ever had really took it seriously. And they were a lot of the reason why the sections played well. Also, I did an overhead projector in my early time there at Cocoa.
That was technology. That was leading edge technology.
Oh yeah, I had a wire recorder at one time too. You know, recording the band was something with the wire recorder. You ever go fishing and get your line tangled? Well, you do that with a wire recorder too. But anyway, I showed the score and showed how the parts would interact with each other. And that's the way we begin to get the idea how you listen across the band. And I almost every tune we played, we showed them on the screen how the score looked. They got a picture in their mind, and then they could listen and have the sound in their mind as well. And that's the way they begin to listen across the band and begin to tune across the band. And this part has to be heard, and this part is accompaniment, etc., etc. And it helped a lot.
What about literature selection?
Well, of course, you know, we did a lot of the tunes that we were required to play. And in those days, my goodness, we hoped that we had the instrumentation to play the tunes that they wanted us to play it on. Sometimes you had to rewrite the parts, and you had to do that sort of thing. But
okay, all right. But that's good advice that that it is possible to rewrite parts to make a piece that doesn't seem to fit your band fit it better if you need to compensate for not having certain instruments in your group.
That's what we had to do a lot of times, especially on those tunes that were designated by FBA, and you had to play one or the other. That
was back when it was contest, and then there was a required piece.
And we used to have required maneuvers on the football field too. We had to go through all the required maneuvers, and then do a countermarch and come back. Then we'd do our show. But the first thing you had to do to go through all these obliques and all the things that they required you to do.
That's very interesting. What did you do during your teaching years to keep your edge and to keep your band excited about band?
Well, of course, when you allow the students to sort of run the things, and you got to be careful of that, because sometimes it doesn't go in the right direction, but you got to make sure that it's going to go in the right direction before you let go of it. And so here are places that...
You mentioned several big names that came and performed with your band over the years.
One of the things we were concerned about, we wanted them to hear professional musicians. We wanted them to hear people that were really, really great. And so we had people like Rafael Mendez. He came in and played a concert with us. And my goodness, how he can play the trumpet. He had two sons who would play duets with him, too. I don't know if you ever heard his recordings. And then Maynard Ferguson came with his screech trumpet, and Pete Fountain came and with his clarinet, and then Ravelli came with his band from Michigan, and they played the Racketsy March, and my goodness, we were all sitting that far off our seats when he played that. And then Stan Kenton came and played, and remember going up into a classroom and asking him questions about this and that and the other thing. It was interesting how his take on things. And then Count Basie, of course, Count Basie is the one that called me, told me he couldn't come and talk to my kids, but they were going to come there anyway. He had to do Blazing Saddles, so he couldn't come. And Benny Goodman came. But to walk around inside and around the players while they were playing, and then the band directors had the opportunity to do that when they had rehearsals. We could walk around and stand in front, and the trombones here, and you could walk all around. And it was just amazing to hear the band right inside the band. So all these players, we had our students listen to and to hear them know what they were doing.
Wow. What are you doing now that you're retired to maintain a touch with music?
Well, I have a lot at the Tampa Sports Authority, and I run this lot, which is the transit lot where the buses and limos and taxis and all come in, and I take care of that. Then I get to go to the ball games for free.
Oh.
And anything that happens, if they have a concert, I do the baseball, the New York Giants and the New York Yankees have a place right across the street, and we do that too. But I have grandchildren. I have some houses we rent. I have to keep them every now and then. Renters move in and move out, you know. So I keep really busy. I don't have any time to.
Okay. All right. Well, we're almost at the end of our allotted time. Do you have a short story you'd like to tell us that kind of tells us about your satisfaction with being a band director?
Well, I really look back on the grade 8 and a lot of other people's. I have some letters at home of students that have written me and told me that they enjoyed their time and they hoped that I knew that I did make a difference in their lives. I got a letter from a optical person. He's a doctor, and he's the one that left his contacts in his eyes in New York, and we had to take him to the hospital. And his eyes were bandaged. He didn't see anything of New York, and just as we left New York, he got his bandages off. He left his contacts in again, and in Washington, D.C., when we went down to see Kennedy's grave, he couldn't see Kennedy's grave because he had the bandages back on. The band took him by hand and led him around, but they got pretty sick of it when he did it the second time.
This was back when contact lenses were made of glass.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you couldn't leave them in. You had to couldn't leave them in over so long a time.
Well, then he took an interesting career path after that. That must have made an impression on him to want to become an optician. Well, I want to thank you for spending time with us, for taking us down memory lane, for coming back and visiting Eustis High School again.
Oh my goodness, the place is so different. It doesn't look like the same place.
Well, we've had a delightful half hour, and now it's time to say bye-bye.
Well, bye, and I hope you enjoy watching me.